I'm Scott A. Ford, the creator of Hologram Hunter, and you're listening to the True North Country Comics Podcasts.
Welcome to the True North Country Comics Podcast, dedicated to promote Canadian comic book and graphic novel creators and supporters. I'm John Swinimer. On this episode, I chat with Scott A. Ford about Hologram Hunter and more in preparation for FAN EXPO Canada 2025. Please like and subscribe to this website by hitting the subscribe button so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. Scott A. Ford is an award-winning comic creator, illustrator, and designer living in Winnipeg, Manitoba. His artistry features vivid colors, striking imagery, skulls, swords, masks, and most anything that walks a line between dark and whimsical. Scott's creativity emphasizes atmosphere and rich visuals, drawing inspiration from video games, film, and animation. His comic projects include Boreal, Ark Land, Ocosomoso, and Romulus Remus. His experimental fantasy horror comic Giant's Well received a 2017 Manitoba Book Award for book design and illustration. Scott's work has been featured in galleries and publications, on beer cans and book covers, and he spoke about his artistic practice at numerous public presentations about art and design. Hologram Hunter is his latest project. Hologram Hunter is a 3D sci-fi graphic novel with a story centered on a nameless protagonist and the robotic cat companion navigating a mysterious desolate city with a robotic parasite threat lurking around every corner. The hunter finds signs of this robotic parasite that's killing any organic life in the city, so he has to virtually enter the hive mind of these creatures to find the source of their spread, which is when the story transitions to Anaglyph 3D. So, without further ado, here's my chat with Scott A. Ford about Hologram Hunter and more in preparation for FAN EXPO Canada 2025. So, Scott Ford, thank you very much for taking time to chat with me.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
I appreciate your time. Before I get going with all the questions, I would like to know, what are you reading today?
What I am reading right now is Witch Hat Atelier, the manga series. Yeah, recently picked that up again after some recommendations from some friends, and I tried reading it a while back. Yeah, just fell off for one reason or another, don't really recall, but picked it up again and really enjoying it.
Nice. Yeah, I've heard a lot of people recommend it. I haven't gotten around to that yet, but glad you're finding some time to do that reading, so that's great. We're talking about one of your latest projects, Hologram Hunter. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about that story. What's it all about?
So Hologram Hunter is a sci-fi action-adventure one-shot that comes with 3D glasses, so that is kind of the unique gimmick, if I can use the word gimmick in an affectionate way, that it uses old-school red and blue 3D glasses to see some of my artwork in 3D. That was a long, painstaking, but very interesting and I think fairly unique process of making old school blue and red 3D art. It's called anaglyph is the technical term for that kind of old school 3D. But yeah, it's otherwise action adventure sci-fi comic about, it's kind of just about fighting robots in a digital world in a sort of mysterious post-apocalyptic environment. But my real objective for the book was this stylistic experiment of, I learned how to make 3D, anaglyph 3D artwork before I had any ideas of what to do with it. But that immediately created the spark that I couldn't stop thinking about, that I have to make this into a comic. This is just too cool.
Was there anything specific that inspired you to create the story and the book?
Mostly, yeah, just the stylistic experiment, like I was saying, of working with 3D art and learning how to make anaglyph 3D art and all the fun little tricks that you can do with it. I was also just heavily inspired by a lot of other mysterious sci-fi works that I've really enjoyed over the years, particularly animated short films and sci-fi anime from like years ago, from retro sci-fi anime. Yeah, I love these sort of mysterious sci-fi worlds that almost operate on a more fantastical level of creating a mysterious world that is more sci-fi than it is fantasy, but that offers a lot more mystery than it does answers about what is actually going on and what this world is about, that I find really intriguing.
Ah, okay. Now, besides yourself, would you say the target audience is this sci-fi fantasy type of readership? Is that who you're aiming the book for?
Yeah, it's honestly good for all ages. I've had lots of parents come up to my table at various conventions asking if it's good for their kids, and yeah, and I say, yeah, it's fine for kids. There isn't really any swearing to speak of or any sort of gratuitous imagery. Again, it's kind of an action adventure comic about fighting robots that I've definitely had some parents and kids alike recount that they enjoyed it and they found it really enthralling, just being able to read a book in 3D where the art is popping off the page has been really encouraging and really amazing to hear that kind of feedback. But it is also on the narrative side a more, like I was saying, subtle and kind of mysterious story that I think an adult readership or young adult readership can enjoy, where it is offering this kind of keyhole view into a strange sci-fi scenario and world where the setting, the location of the story is very much not explained, but through just environmental storytelling. And I love backgrounds and I love environmental details. There is a lot to investigate just visually through the art of how this world came to be in this state where this main character, the titular Hologram Hunter, is combating this robotic presence in both the physical and virtual realms. Yeah, it leaves a lot of mystery and questions that I think an adult readership will find really intriguing to think about and mull over, in addition to just being like a fun action comic.
Now, you hinted about this before previously in discussing the book, but I'm wondering if you could talk a little bit about your creative process for this book and how it differs from your previous work.
Yeah, this book, again, first time I've ever tried anaglyph 3D art. So that was a huge experiment. And a big part of that was doing 3D modeling, a different kind of 3D, making digital 3D models for this book that I have done in the past. I initially did a lot of 3D modeling to use as art references for my graphic novel Ark Land to make very rudimentary kind of dioramas or sets of various environments. If I know that a chapter is going to take place in a certain location where I want the camera to move around a lot and show off a very cinematic feel to a conversation or action set piece. And so I want to craft these very sort of tangible and realistic is maybe the wrong word, but tangible feeling environments where you feel like you can understand a space and understand how a character exists in that space and moves through it from location to location. And so coming off of Ark Land, Hologram Hunter really, really explored that 3D modeling to a much higher level where I was putting a lot more detail into those 3D environments that I was sculpting from scratch, and also really helped with the 3D art making, where the process of making the 3D anaglyph artwork was really using these 3D models and environments to recreate them in 3D. So if you think of like old school 3D comics from years past, where it's 3D, but it is kind of faking 3D, where it is 2D illustration that then they are kind of cutting out elements and extruding them like a sort of cardboard cutout. But the illustrations themselves start off as traditional flat 2D illustrations. Whereas for this book, the illustrations started as 3D models that I can position characters and objects and move a camera around a literal 3D space, so that when I then process that and render that to be viewed in anaglyph 3D, it's not faking it. It's not cardboard cutouts. You are seeing the 3D environments as they are, as 3D environments. That was the real spark of realizing that I could do that. And that was just through my own experimentation, figuring that out on my own, that I realized this was possible. It felt like discovering magic. It was wild to realize that I could sculpt these 3D environments and then actually see them in 3D. So that was a huge part of this process.
Very good. So I've got to ask then, do you think you do a follow-up? And if not, what other projects do you have on the go?
Yeah, I don't plan on making a follow-up to Hologram Hunter, which is maybe a little disappointing to some folks because it does, if I, very mild spoilers, it does end on a bit of a cliffhanger, but that cliffhanger was always intentional to be the ending of the book. Again, really leaning into the mystery of this world. That I like open-ended stories. I like stories that aren't neatly tied up in a bow where all the loose ends are tied up. And this is definitely one of those where I think it sets up wanting more, but in a way, I like endings that keep you thinking about it and keep you wondering what else exists in the world or where these characters move from there. But no, I don't have a sequel plan for Hologram Hunter. I've definitely thought about it, but also the process of making this graphic novel was so labor intensive with this bizarre art creation process that it took me over 3 years to make this 90-page graphic novel. And yeah, I just don't know if I can go through that again. So that's a bit of behind the scenes of, it was a very labor intensive process that I'm really happy with the end results. And I'm not sure I could go through that again, to be honest. But yeah, I'm always moving on to new things and new works. In particular, I have been working on, which I actually started working on in the middle of production with Hologram Hunter, a new long form fantasy story that I'm not really sure what the end sort of package is going to be, whether it's going to be, a series of short floppy comics or a series of longer graphic novels, or what I'm most interested in pursuing is, can I release it as a web comic more regularly? And yeah, maybe build up a readership across weekly or bi-weekly releases. So that's what I've been working on for the last little while, is this long form fantasy comic that has a lot of world building, a lot of character development, kind of the opposite to Hologram Hunter, where Hologram Hunter is not just because it's sci-fi versus fantasy, but also because Hologram Hunter, again, was this one-shot kind of mysterious graphic novel that leaves a lot of mystery and questions. I want to do this long-form fantasy series that obviously has a lot of mystery, but also answers a lot of questions and really delves into some deep and intricate world building about, this whole strange fantasy world and magic that exists in there, and how the various societal structures and elements and characters exist within this magical system and may conflict with it. So that is a big, ambitious project that I've been working on for a while and am continuing to work on. That, no planned release yet for any of that. It's still early development, doing concept art and writing and lore development.
Well, all in good time, I'm sure, and something to look forward to.
Yeah.
Good. Now, I understand you're going to be exhibiting at FAN EXPO Canada. Well, I wanted to ask you,
right.
What are you looking forward to most at that event?
Honestly, just about every event that I go to, because I travel alone and so I'm exhibiting alone. So unfortunately, I don't get a ton of time to explore the show floor. But in the time that I can hopefully get to escape from my booth, just seeing new artwork. I just love discovering new independent artists creating new original artwork that I've never seen before, just because I haven't been to FAN EXPO Canada since 2018. And that was my first and only time I've been to the show. And so excited to see, just artists I've never seen before, because I do a lot more shows out west versus shows out east. And so I feel like there's a larger pool of artists that exhibit more shows out east that I just am not as familiar with. And on the flip side, I'm also just really excited to show my artwork to that group of people. If I'm not mistaken, FAN EXPO in Toronto is the biggest comic convention expo in Canada. Is that
pop culture one for sure. Absolutely.
Yeah. So I'm excited for that. And especially since I haven't been back since 2018, basically everything that I'm almost everything that I'm going to be showing off is new. And that's exciting to just be able to find new audience, find new people excited about my work. That's the whole reason that I do what I do, is so that I make artwork for myself, but I make artwork for people, to make people excited, to make people inspired. And so just being able to reach more people that maybe have never seen my artwork before, is very exciting. So I'm very excited for that.
Yeah, and speaking of that, for people who want to find out more about you and buy your books and artwork, where do you recommend that they go online?
So I've got my main website, scottafordart.com. From there, you can read a ton of free comics on my website, as well as see artwork. And there are links to my Patreon that has additional comics that for just $2 or $3, depending upon your region, to read a bunch of my other premium comics in addition to my free comics, as well as links to my online store and my various social media on Instagram, Blue Sky, YouTube. I also recommend checking out my Patreon, which again, you can find the link to from my website, scottafordart.com. And my Patreon is free to subscribe. It's not behind a paywall where I put out separate from the premium comics on my Patreon, I put out a monthly post that just catalogs what I've been up to. And so it's, you can subscribe to that, and then you just get that in your email just once a month. That, it's not going to spam you. And you just get one post to say, hey, here's what I've been working on. And often I'll share artwork there before I share it anywhere else on social media.
Thanks to Scott for the chat. You can discover more about Scott A. Ford online at scottfordart.com and on Instagram. And thank you for tuning into the True North Country Comics podcast. I invite you to visit the True North Country Comics website to listen to even more conversations, discover how creators are making comic books and graphic novels. I encourage you to subscribe via the website so you'll be notified about new podcast interviews and article posts. This podcast is available wherever podcasts are enjoyed. Please like, follow, and subscribe. You can follow along True North Country Comics on most social media sites, and you're encouraged to send any and all feedback to john@truenorthcountrycomics.com. Thanks for tuning in, and come back soon for another episode. Bye for now. True North Country Comics podcast is copyright True North Country Comics, copyright 2025.